Welcome, everyone. I am so incredibly glad you're joining me for today's explainer because we are diving into an architect's blueprint today. But we're not talking about a blueprint for a building. We're actually looking at the blueprint for civilization itself. We're going to break down exactly how our societies are built, literally from the concrete under our feet all the way up to the abstract rules that govern how we behave. So let's dive right in. Think about this for a second. House style is decided, societal norm is learnt. I actually want to slow down our pace right at the top here just to appreciate the weight of that. In just 8 words, we're asked to recognize the massive difference between what we consciously choose, like the design of a house, and what we passively absorb from the environment around us. This rhythm, these sharp, distinct observations, well, that's really the heartbeat of what we're exploring today. And the brilliant mind behind these insights is Oluyomi Oladevid. She is a visionary policy influencer from Nigeria, and she is just deeply, deeply passionate about global development and societal transformation. What's absolutely fascinating about her worldview is that it's built on order, intention, and profound observation, and it's all driven by her faith. In fact, she beautifully describes her Father God as the wheel within her wheels.
Okay, let's look at the first phase, building the physical foundation, or the concrete realities.
This right here brilliantly illustrates her core method of observation. Just take the physical world. She says, highways are concrete. They are solid, they're unyielding, they're poured with absolute permanence. But then contrast that with the social side. Societal norm is learnt. It's fluid, right? It's adaptable and entirely a product of human interaction. She's constantly juxtaposing the strict permanence of the built environment with the dynamic, changing nature of human behavior.
She meticulously categorizes these physical anchors of our civilization. Shelters are built, which implies a very deliberate construction for our protection. Pillars are shapely. I love this because it speaks not just to utility, but to aesthetics, the actual art of structure. Then we have highways are concrete, providing those hard, permanent paths for connection, and goods are grown, rooting us right back to the earth. She clearly has this deep, deep appreciation for foundational infrastructure as the basic prerequisite for any functioning society.
Moving on to the economics of value, which is basically how we go about running the machine.
You see, she views the economy not as some random accident, but as a highly structured machine. Take currency. She observes that its issue is regulated, meaning it requires essential authority. She says territories are farms, which means land is a resource that is quite literally meant to be cultivated. And ultimately, value is distributed. It moves around. It doesn't just sit there stagnating. She sees the economic world as highly active and inherently productive.
I really want to highlight one specific observation here because it is just so evocative. She calls factories runners. Let's deconstruct that metaphor for a minute. She doesn't view industry as just static brick-and-mortar buildings with big smokestacks. By calling them runners, she is characterizing them as engines of continuous economic progress and forward motion. They are literally the athletes of the economy, carrying the baton of development forward.
Next up, cultivating culture and norms. This is the intangible fabric that holds us together. Corporate culture is distilled. National value is created. Notice the active verb she uses here, distilled and created. She firmly believes that culture isn't just something that accidentally happens to a group of people. Building corporate culture requires boiling things down to their most essential elements. And national value? That requires the hard, intentional work of creation. It is always a deliberate effort by the people operating within those systems.
And this brings us to a really fascinating observation about political and social groups. She flat out states that parties are baskets. Think about it. Baskets are merely containers. They only exist to collect things, whether that's ideas, affiliations, votes, or people. By defining them this way, she suggests that political or social groups are really just temporary vessels. They hold substance, sure, but they are not the substance itself. It's a remarkably clear-eyed, almost refreshing way to view political structures.
Speaking of policy, consider how she visualizes a well-ordered society. Citygate is staffed implies security and a real awareness of borders. Streetlight is powered points directly to municipal responsibility and keeping the lights on. Firm ladder is placed. Wow, that is a beautiful metaphor for providing structured opportunities for upward mobility. And finally, policy is privileged. She deliberately spells it with a D here in her text, emphasizing that the rules and strategies we elevate are given a special, heavily protected status. Okay, let's just pause on this one. Names are stickers. This might honestly be the most profound thought in her entire text. It's just 3 words, but they pack such an incredible philosophical punch.
She sees labels and titles not as fundamental, unchangeable truths about a person, but as temporary attachments. Stickers can be peeled off. They denote surface-level information. It's just a powerful reminder not to ever confuse the label with the underlying reality of a person or thing.
Let's transition into living history and story, the timeline of us.
There is a really sharp contrast to observe here. History is lived versus story is told. She is drawing a massive line between the raw, experiential reality of actually living through events, which is the history, and the curated, highly subjective narrative that is eventually shared with others, which is the story. History is the messy, complex reality on the ground. Story is just the neat little package we put it in later to try and make sense of it all.
Which brings us to the final phase, the human element, roles, growth, and leadership.
Because honestly, what are concrete highways or staffed city gates without the actual people who inhabit them? She writes, melodies are taught, starters are learners. This beautifully showcases her core belief in continuous human development. We aren't born knowing the tune, right? The melodies of life and culture must be actively taught to us. And if you are a starter, well, you are, by definition, a learner. It all begins with teaching and a heavy dose of humility.
Let's summarize her view on these crucial human roles. Developers are thoughtful. Building things right takes intellect and a lot of care. Starters are learners. We just touched on that fundamental need for humility. But look at this final point. Leaders are followers. It's a beautiful paradox, isn't it? She believes that true leaders cannot simply command from the top down. They must first deeply observe the physical rules, the economics, and the culture around them. To lead the machine, you first have to understand how to follow its rhythms.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to really reflect on today. Look at this beautifully structured worldview Oluyomi Oladevid has laid out for us, everything from the concrete highways to the distilled culture. In this system she describes, where do you fit right now? Are you a starter, a learner, or are you a leader who first knows exactly how to follow? Think about your role in the blueprint of society today. Thank you so much for exploring this with me, and definitely keep questioning the structures around you.